now, COVID-19 has taken the lives of so many and has distanced us from the ones we love. But thanks to science, we have vaccines that can help us get back to our most full lives. The vaccines are safe, they'll save lives, and we all need to be in this together to come out of this pandemic. In the meantime, wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance, and please, when it's your turn, get vaccinated and help protect Chicago. For more information, visit chicago.gov/COVIDvax.
In 1945, Walter Smith Sr. opened a family business in his name. 4 generations in, and the Smith family remains committed to the ideals he set forth. Offer furniture for all Chicagoans, including a variety of styles and price points, and provide service to all who enter our doors, including in-store and in-home design assistance. We look forward to welcoming you into the Smith family, just as we have since 1945.
Grove Dental provides comprehensive dental care, from the first tooth to braces to adult dental needs. With over 30 dentists and specialists, Grove Dental is here for the whole family. Locations in Bolingbrook, Downers Grove, Wheaton, and Lombard. Learn more at grovedental.com.
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center. Programming on WTTW originates from the Alexandra C. and John D. Nichols Broadcast Operations Center. We gratefully acknowledge their outstanding support.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
They are the sacred sextet of silliness.
Holy Parrot, wake up!
Join some of the great comic influencers of our time to celebrate Monty Python's best bits.
Saturday at 9 on WTTW.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman here in our Northwest Side studio.
And I'm Paris Schutz reporting live from Northalsted in the East Lakeview community.
On the show tonight,
for the 3rd straight year, I'll sign into law another balanced budget.
One-on-one with Governor J.B. Pritzker about the budget, redistricting, the state reopening, and more.
The governor has said he's not going to sign a bill that doesn't do significant steps on climate change, significantly decarbonize our electric sector.
The future of the governor's green energy bill that has stalled in Springfield.
Pride kind of snuck up on us as the same month that the pandemic kind of comes to an end.
How one of Chicago's LGBTQ neighborhoods is celebrating Pride this month as the city prepares to fully reopen.
I like skateboarding and I think you should learn to try it.
A new skateboard program gives young Chicagoans a chance to learn new skills and life lessons. And Geoffrey Bear on Chicago's elusive search for an official song in this week's Ask Geoffrey.
But first, Brandis, as we mentioned, we are in Northalsted, but it used to be called Boys Town. We'll get into that name change in just a bit and why it happened. As you mentioned, full reopening here in Chicago starting next Friday. This is the beginning of Pride Month as well, so understandably businesses are more optimistic here than they have been in over a year. We'll get into all of that and more in just a bit, but first we toss it back to you.
Paris, we'll see you soon. And now to some of today's top stories. Mayor Lori Lightfoot says Chicago is on track to fully reopen next week. That puts the city in line with the state's plan to lift all restrictions on businesses and gatherings June 11th. A week from tomorrow, folks, and ahead of the previously announced July 4th reopening.
Now is the time to do this. You know, these numbers are looking so good right now. We don't know for sure what the future will hold, and we've talked about that. Could we have a surge in the fall? Could we have a surge in the winter? If we did, that would show up in people who are not vaccinated. But right now, with the way this is heading, I completely agree with you. All right, now
Lightfoot and Chicago's Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady say all the metrics, particularly hospitalizations, are moving in the right direction, but they add it is important for Chicago's vaccination rate to continue increasing. Meanwhile, state health officials announced more than 600 new cases of COVID-19, including 24 additional deaths. Illinois has seen a total of more than 1.3 million recorded cases of coronavirus and 22,865 deaths. At last count, more than 11.3 million doses of the vaccine have been given out across the state. City Council members consider whether to make rentable e-scooters a permanent fixture in Chicago. The city allowed a second scooter pilot program last year with new requirements like locking scooters up when not in use so they wouldn't block sidewalks. At a hearing this afternoon, alderpeople and advocates debated the value of allowing scooters in the city for good. Alderperson Walter Burnett called for establishing rules and regulations for operating a scooter, particularly as more and more people buy their own.
There needs to be rules, and if there's no rules, people aren't going to regulate themselves. So we need to deal with that. But I do think scooters is an excellent mode of transportation. It can get people somewhere in a short distance, fast, cheap. So, I mean, you know, and I know a lot of folks, I saw a lot of people when we had the pilots, a lot of people all over the city riding them.
But some pushed for only allowing scooters in wards if the local alderperson supports them. The meeting ended with calls for another hearing with a particular focus on safety issues. The Bud Billiken Parade is back. The popular back-to-school event on the South Side was canceled last year due to the pandemic. Organizers are planning for an August 14th parade this year with a shortened route and fewer performers. The parade will end in a free community festival in Washington Park. And now to Amanda Vinicky for a one-on-one with Illinois' governor. Amanda.
Brandis, it's been a big week in Springfield as the spring legislative session, well, mostly wrapped up. A $42 billion budget is headed towards Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk, waiting to be signed. There's contention in the General Assembly over bills ranging from redistricting maps to elected school boards. Meanwhile, Illinois set to reopen June 11th as COVID cases fall. Joining us to talk about this and more is Governor J.B. Pritzker. We very much appreciate your being with us, Governor. Now, session has again mostly adjourned. I know you've said that you're planning to sign that budget into law. Besides that, what bill are you most excited about giving your signature to?
Well, there's a lot to work with, frankly. There was a very productive session of the General Assembly. I'll say that one of the big bills that I look forward to signing is something that we're going to have to take up over the next couple of weeks, and that's our energy legislation, fighting against climate change, making Illinois a leader in doing so, keeping our nuclear plants open, keeping those jobs, and making sure that we're keeping our state healthy and environmentally friendly.
So banking on an energy deal that thus far has proved elusive to get done. Now, something that the General Assembly did do already is put a constitutional amendment on next year's ballot. This is one that protects union rights. Are you going to try, again, to amend the Constitution to allow for a graduated income tax?
I'm not looking to do that on next year's ballot. I do think that we need a more fair tax system in the state of Illinois. We made it a little bit fairer in this budget this year by cutting those corporate loopholes and corporate welfare. And those are the wealthiest companies in the state of Illinois, the ones who benefited greatly during COVID-19, during the pandemic over the last year. And we're just asking them to step up to the plate. We did that $656 million of structural deficit now cut for the state. So we're in much better financial shape.
Why not an earned income tax credit for lower income Illinoisans then?
I look forward to working on that as well. As you know, we have a federal earned income tax credit. I think we can do the same thing at the state level.
Now, last night on our program, we had Senate Republican leader Dan McConkey, and he had this to say about Democrats' redistricting efforts.
What we should be doing is encouraging the governor to follow through, make sure that Governor Pritzker is reminiscent of candidate Pritzker. He was on the campaign trail and he promised time and time again to support an independent map drawing process and to veto maps that were drawn by politicians picking their own constituents. This is his golden opportunity right now to prove that he wasn't lying to the people of Illinois.
Now, I know you've said that you haven't reviewed the maps yet, but regardless, by virtue of how they were drawn, how are you not, if not lying, at least backing away from a promise?
Well, let's start with the fact that what I really want is a constitutional amendment for an independent commission to draw the maps. That is what the legislature should have done, didn't do. There are people who wanted to have a legislation passed for an independent commission. It's unclear to me whether that's constitutional or not, but that could have been a way to do it. Then, Republicans and Democrats working together in a bipartisan fashion would have been another way to get a fair map. I'll remind you that the Republicans don't seem to want to do any of those things. They have argued that they want an independent commission, but they didn't do anything about it.
Well, they introduced legislation. They introduced legislation.
Of a fair map, and frankly, they just want to run out the clock. I want to remind you that the leader in the House of their redistricting efforts, the Republicans' redistricting efforts, Tim Butler, actually said at a press conference that his definition of a fair map is one in which more Republicans, are elected to the General Assembly. That's not the definition of a fair map. That's not how
What is your definition? Give me three criteria.
That's not how you draw them.
Yeah, Governor, could you give me just 3 bullet points of your criteria?
Right. So first of all, we've got to make sure that the maps follow the Illinois Voting Rights Act, the U.S. Voting Rights Act, the Supreme Court rulings on majority-minority districts. Those are basic things that need to happen in a map. And then it's extraordinarily important to me that we maintain the diversity of our state in our state legislature. So that's not just majority-minority districts. It also means that there are plurality minority communities in many of these districts that could put forward candidates that could win those districts. I'll give you an example of Lauren Underwood, the Congresswoman, who won in a district that's overwhelmingly white, but she put together a coalition and won that district. She won across, people of all backgrounds. That's something that could happen, especially where there's a plurality of a minority community. So those are things that I look at when I think about fairness.
Now, in terms of the city of Chicago, we've done a lot of reporting on the Chicago, unfortunately, on track for another brutally deadly year with violence. What have you done to quell violence in the city?
Significantly increased our funding of violence interruption programs, making sure that we're providing funding for summer employment programs, and then addressing the underlying causes of violence across the state of Illinois. It's not just about the city of Chicago. Rockford, Carbondale, other places in the state need help too, and we've been doing that from day one. I think you also know that the pandemic has brought on more violence, more crime across the country, mainly because we've seen unemployment rise. We've seen challenges for many communities have been left out and left behind. So we need to lift them up. That's going to help us deal with the violent crime and overall crime problem in Illinois.
Now, another challenging and tragic question here. You blasted your predecessor for veterans' deaths via Legionnaire's disease at the Quincy state-run Veterans Home. Now, a recent state audit blasts your administration for grave errors that led to more COVID deaths than necessary at the home in LaSalle. Why should families trust the state to care for their loved ones at Illinois Veterans Homes?
Well, let me start by reminding you that we've been in a global pandemic that has had no mercy, particularly on those who are elderly, those who are in nursing homes, and we've had nursing home deaths all across the country.
Certainly.
Secondly, I'll point out that the report that you're referencing is one that I asked an independent IG to do, an inspector general to review everything about the Veterans Home and give us a report of any of the challenges or failures that occurred there. And there were some very surprising, shocking things that occurred that were in that report. That's not the first report. We also got the VA involved, the Veterans Administration of the United States, as well as our own IDVA, the Department of Veterans Affairs in Illinois. And so, we've been transparent from day one. This is really challenging. When people in the community where that veterans home resides aren't wearing masks and where they've got a very high rate of infection, case positivity, test positivity in that area, people who live there and work at the home, unfortunately, were bringing that into the home. So these are errors that were made gravely. I want you to know that
is there beyond changeover
of the veterans in those homes, and I listen to them, I talk to them. This is it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. But we've been transparent from day one, and that's vastly different than my predecessor, who tried to hide what happened at the Quincy Veterans Home.
Obviously, there's been change at the top, but any institutional changes at those veterans' homes in lieu of what you said was surprising, apparently checks that should have happened before it came to this?
We've made significant changes. Well, the first thing I'd point out is we have a new leader for our Department of Veterans Affairs, someone who ran the homes in Ohio, did so successfully. He's done a terrific job since he came in just a couple of months ago, of reviewing all the procedures, making sure we tighten all those up, hiring in senior positions. You know, I fired the people that caused some of these challenges, people that were involved in this across the board, and we needed to fill those positions. So a lot has been done to rectify the situation. It's very important to me that we stand up and protect our veterans in our state.
Let's look to the future now. There already are several Republicans lining up to run against you in the governor's race. What do you think thus far of your competition?
Well, I haven't decided whether I'm running. That's something that I'm, going to talk to my family about and make a decision, hopefully reasonably shortly. I will say that Republicans who are, thinking that they're going to run for governor, many of them have fought against the mitigations, have stood on the side of Donald Trump and all of his lies. These are folks who really shouldn't run the state of Illinois because they don't seem to care about the working families of Illinois. They haven't over the last year as a result of their failure to push mitigations forward, to stand up for those mitigations. A couple of them not wearing masks and telling other people not to. I just think that they're not qualified to be governor as a result of how they reacted to the pandemic.
You've put $35 million in your campaign fund, and I know you've been busier than most during the pandemic, but still presumably more time with family than before. You haven't talked this over with them and made any sort of decision yet, really?
Not as a family. I think you probably know that, I haven't had a vacation. I haven't had much time off. It's very important to me to engage my whole family at the same time. And so that's a conversation that we'll be having.
When?
I think it's very important to make the decision the right way. I have 2 teenage kids, and spending time with them is extraordinarily important to me. And of course, my wife, the impact of being governor on them weighs on me. There have been a lot of unfair, accusations against my daughter. Those are all things that we weigh in the process of making a decision.
When do you think you'll reach a decision?
Shortly. I need to, again, have those conversations with my family, and so I don't think it'll be too long.
Quick question here. You are signed a measure that allows people to take their vaccine cards. So if they've gotten that COVID shot, to get a free shot. If you were going to do the same, maybe go to a local watering hole or restaurant, what would you choose for your free shot?
Wait, you're asking me what I would drink or where I would go?
Both.
Well, I said at a press conference very recently that I probably would choose a shot and a shot. And I'm partial to tequila.
All right. Well, it certainly is wonderful news to see those COVID cases going down. We're glad about it. I know you are too. Thank you very much for joining us for all of that, J.B. Pritzker.
Thanks, Amanda.
And now, Brandis, we go back to you.
Amanda, thank you. June is Pride Month, which is being celebrated all throughout the city. But nowhere is it celebrated more than in Chicago's Northalsted neighborhood, formerly known as Boys Town. The neighborhood, located in the Lakeview community area, is known as the center of LGBTQ life in Chicago and has just started to recover the vibrant character that made it famous. That's not without a host of struggles the community has faced over the last year of the pandemic and civil unrest. Paris Schutz and producer Marissa Nelson spent the day there, and Paris joins us now from North Halsted Street. Paris, what's going on?
Yeah, Brenda, signs of life all around us. A lot of excitement. As you know, the mayor announced that Chicago will fully reopen next Friday, this coinciding with Pride Month, and Mayor Lightfoot made clear that Pride is not exclusive to any one neighborhood, but certainly North Halsted here on the north side in Lakeview is the heartbeat of Chicago's LGBTQ community. And this is a neighborhood that has relied over the years on its small local merchants, not just the bars and the clubs, but stores and hair salons, etc. And those bars and clubs, they just started experimenting with fully reopening this past weekend. And the North Halsted Chamber of Commerce reports to us that every single business on this strip has survived the shutdown and the pandemic of last year, save for one that moved to another location. That's an extraordinary feat when you consider some of these big clubs like Sidetracks and the Playground Theater. They haven't been able to operate nearly at all over the last year, but this neighborhood is no stranger to adversity, and it was a community approach that kept one another afloat.
The Chamber of Commerce partnered with the SSA, our taxing body, to assist businesses in retrofitting their patios, retrofitting their AC systems or HVAC systems so that they could help mitigate viruses inside and make warming stations outside, if you will. Having an outdoor patio in the middle of the winter is not fun in Chicago.
And one of the bars and clubs we spoke to was Roscoe's. They opened their dance floor this past Friday for the first time in over a year. The club manager says there was a lot of excitement around that, but to get to that dance floor and to shake your tail a little bit, you had to show proof of vaccination.
Everyone has to show their card, either their physical card, a copy of their card, or a picture of their card that they keep on their phones, which are very popular right now, probably the main thing.
How did that go over?
Very well, very smoothly. People are excited to, it's kind of a badge of honor right now to show off that you got the vaccine and to show off that you are back out and enjoying the world again.
You notice we referred to this strip as North Halsted. It used to be called Boys Town. There was a name change recently. It's a little bit controversial, so now all the banners here say North Halsted. And from a business perspective, Lake Ellen wanted to make clear to us that it's always been known as North Halsted. Boys Town kind of caught on as a nickname in the last few years, but they did a survey and a majority of the businesses supported the name change.
It wasn't so much whether or not people thought the name should stay the same or change. It was, did the name make everyone feel welcome? And there was a sub-segment of our community, specifically the trans, lesbian, and queer portions of our community, that felt there could be a more inclusive name. So we reverted our marketing back to the geographical area of North Halsted, Chicago's proudest neighborhood.
And we met one of the activists who led the charge for that name change, who says that despite the appearance of inclusivity here, this neighborhood has struggled a bit with some tolerance issues, specifically with folks of color and in the trans or non-binary community.
A lot of the businesses market toward a larger heteronormative audience. They want to get people from Wrigleyville to come over and spend money here, which is totally understandable, but it invites in people that don't understand maybe who they're talking to. They don't understand what a trans person is. And when they walk down the street and see signs that say Boys Town, they're expecting to see a bunch of boys partying at the Pride Parade, you know? And our community is much larger than just a corporate Pride Parade.
And one of the anchors here is the Center on Halsted. It's a public resource for LGBTQ folks all across the city, not just here in North Halsted. And Senior Director Jolie Holloman agreed with this issue that the subset of the LGBTQ population that defines itself as intersectional, whether it be by gender or background or orientation, they suffer a little bit more than the general population.
But really being able to bring all different parts of yourself, Black, lesbian, bi, pansexual, all the different parts of yourself to a space, that intersectionality is real, versus just bringing one part and that part be accepted, but you got to hide everything else. So as a youth, having spaces where you can do that in your area versus having to go to a whole nother side of the city is really important.
Still lots of signs of pride in this community. There was the groundbreaking yesterday of the new AIDS garden located at the former Belmont Rocks area along the lakefront. Mayor Lightfoot was there breaking ground, saying that that area was very personal to her, this neighborhood very personal to her. And we're going to be back with the area's longtime alderperson, I should say, Tom Tunney, in just a bit. But now we toss it back to you.
Yep, Harris, we'll see you in a little bit. Up next, a new skateboard program that gives Chicago youth the chance to shred at local boys and girls clubs. Stick around.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/Daily Briefing and sign up.
And there's much more ahead on the program, including a look at the future of the governor's green energy bill. But first, skateboarding has been considered a sport, art form, and even a lifestyle by people devoted to the activity. Here in Chicago, a new skateboard program is helping young people break out of the pandemic blues by learning the basics while picking up valuable life lessons along the way. Chicago Tonight's Evan Garcia recently skated over to the South Side to learn more.
Go, 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 go.
The second week of a youth skateboard program in Chicago starts slow, with participants seated on boards during a race. But by the end of the session, the young skaters are already learning new tricks.
It's really fun, and I think I'm getting better, and I'm learning to do ollies now. Say if there's another skateboard on the ground, and in ollies when you jump over it while you're riding and then you land.
The lessons are a collaboration between the Boys and Girls Club of Chicago and the Chill Foundation, a nonprofit started in 1995 by Burton Snowboards, which runs programs across the world.
Our overall mission is to teach kids how to overcome challenges through board sports. We understand that in Chicago there may be a lot of challenges, different economic situations or socioeconomic things that may be challenging, but here at Chill, our goal is to help them push through that. And if they can see that they can do that on the board, then why can't they do that in regular life?
This year's spring session is taking place in Bridgeport at the Lewis L. Valentine's Boys and Girls Club. The club's art instructor, Tamaris Dennis, is learning alongside the young people while assisting them.
They do look to adults for inspiration, and just seeing me be brave enough to attempt getting on the board is, I wouldn't say the first thing that got them on the board, but it'll definitely get them getting back on the board. Like, oh, if Tamaris is trying it, then I'll try it too. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of.
The skateboard program started here in East Garfield Park at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boys and Girls Club. Classes began in the fall during a surge in COVID-19 cases.
It was just a breath of fresh air. COVID-19 really had an effect on youth's physical, mental, social health. And so Chill really had, just gave the opportunity for you to, be outside, social distance, but also learn a skill and socialize with their peers.
2 years ago, I spoke with instructor Christopher Long for a story on a Chicago Park District skateboard program. Through the Chill Foundation, he's continuing to teach the lessons he learned as a young skater.
Learning a lot about myself through skateboarding, so learning to pick myself up from falling, to be persistent, all these things that we practice and Chill, and noticing that all these soft skills that we develop through skateboarding are inherent to our own personal success, and how can we empower youth to develop those skills to lead to a successful future on and off their skateboards.
9-year-old Tony is already picking up on those important values.
It helped me a lot to become more brave, because at first I kept on falling and off the skateboard and I was kind of scared. But one of the teachers told me that falling is part of learning, so I feel good now. I know how to skateboard properly.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Evan Garcia.
Skateboarding's not bad, Evan. The program kicked off in November with a donation of 25 custom skateboards by Rockford native Virgil Abloh. He's Louis Vuitton's artistic director, the founder of the Off-White fashion label, and an alumnus of the Boys and Girls Club. The Chill Foundation says it plans to bring skateboard lessons back to East Garfield Park this summer. Still to come on Chicago Tonight, we talk with Alderperson Tom Tunney of the 44th Ward about the AIDS garden underway in Lakeview and other city business. Governor Pritzker's clean energy bill could transform energy production in Illinois, but a fight over a downstate coal plant has stalled the deal. Plus, a mayoral tiff, an indicted alderman, and even Rock Hudson. Geoffrey Bayer is here with more on the search for an official Chicago song. All that. But first, some more of today's top stories. Efforts to landmark the former North Kenwood home of blues legend Muddy Waters moved ahead today. City staff and supporters of the effort made their case to the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. Chandra Cooper, granddaughter of Muddy Waters and the owner of the home, plans to open the Mojo Museum on the site and says landmark status is key to preserving Chicago's Black cultural heritage.
Muddy Waters is, as we've said many times here, is considered the father of Chicago blues. And as some of you may know, and if you don't know, visitors from across the world come today to this city and visit that house on a yearly basis.
The commission unanimously approved a preliminary landmark recommendation, and it still needs final approval and will need to pass City Council. There's also a community meeting scheduled for next week. The Chicago Park District announces the return of its popular Night Out in the Park series. This year's season will mark a return to in-person programming with more than 450 arts and culture events across all 77 of Chicago's community areas. The events will feature some COVID-era modifications, including distanced audiences. The themes include community healing through art, nature, and the city's queer community. And now we check back in with Paris, who spent the day reporting in the Northalsted neighborhood within the Lakeview community area. That's as a part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Paris.
Yeah, Brandison, just a bit ago we spoke with the longtime alderman here, alderperson, 44th Ward's Tom Tunney. I began by asking him about that AIDS garden that just broke ground yesterday at Belmont.
It's historical. It's, as the mayor and I have said, it's somewhat sacred ground. In the 70s, 80s, it was one of the very few places to be out in public and enjoying a sense of community. Historically, since there was no beach, there wasn't that popular of a place to go. And it was just north of the Rifle Club. So it was another reason. So it was kind of an area that no one went to. And so I think, and it was before me, but this was a safe space for the community to be out and proud.
So it's good to memorialize that. And speaking of being out and proud, when you were elected, you were the lone wolf here as an openly gay. Now you have an openly lesbian mayor. You have a lot of colleagues on city council that are out.
Let's put it this way.
Reflect on that.
I think what's happened is, thank God that your skill set, you're part of a community, your orientation isn't that much of a big deal. So I think that's actually kind of the best part of it. And of course we have the first openly gay, lesbian, African-American female alderman ever. I don't even know, I mean, in terms of the country. In terms of big cities, she's made history.
You're talking about Mayor Lightfoot.
Mayor Lightfoot,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
And so it's a great month to be proud and out. But I don't wait to June. You know, we're out doing our job every day for the community.
And speaking of being
the entire community, by the way,
doing your job for the community, we were on North Halsted today, and the news that Chicago will follow the state in fully reopening June 11th. You have some of these bars and restaurants that have been fully opened, showing proof of vaccination. What does that mean for the business community?
Well, it means survival. I mean, honestly, you know, most businesses cannot operate successfully or profitably with 50% of capacity. It doesn't work. The hard costs of opening your business every day means you have to get close to 100%. So there have been plenty of lifelines with PPP and city grants and stuff, but you will not be truly independent until you get back to 100%. And we have the theater district. You know, Lakeview is full of theaters, and honestly, they've been pretty much shut down.
And are they coming back?
They're coming back. We've lost a few, and time will tell. But you know, it's not been a good year.
Let's talk Turkey a little bit. Contentious issue is the renaming of Lakeshore Drive, DuSable Drive. Are you in favor of this ordinance, and do you still have concerns about whether people will have to change their address?
I'll be straightforward. I have not been a supporter of it because my residents, 90% do not want to see a name change. They think there are other ways to educate, to celebrate DuSable. And even if it was Barack Obama or George Washington, they don't want to change it. You know, this is iconic, as you've probably reported on.
Well, is that ordinance a fait accompli, though?
Well, I saw the mayor's, proposal today. I don't know. She's going to have to work hard because I think David Moore has the votes he thinks, but people might want to find this as a reasonable compromise There are some members of the council that want to do both. Everything the mayor wants to do and also rename.
Yeah, and the mayor's talking about a festival and finishing DuSable Park and the riverfront.
Well, it's not only a festival, it's educating young people about the DuSable story. You know, and I think that that's good and I think important. Will we be able to, as David Moore would like to do, and others, to do everything, including rename it and everything on the Riverwalk and stuff like that? I think there's going to have to be a compromise. We'll see what happens at the end of the month.
Our chat with 44th Ward Alderperson Tom Tunney just a bit ago, and we'll be back with another community staple, the Howard Brown Health Center, in just a bit. But now, Brandis, we toss it back to you.
All right, Paris, thanks. We'll see you soon. And now to Phil Ponce with a look at an energy bill being considered in Illinois. Phil.
Brandis, the deal on Governor Pritzker's big push to make Illinois a green, energy-powered state has reportedly been close for weeks. Among the key elements of this bill are a plan to phase out fossil fuels, a goal to have 40% of the state's energy come from renewable sources by 2030, and 100% from renewables by 2050. There's also an equity component aimed at ensuring underserved communities benefit from opportunities and jobs. But the bill stalled in the Illinois Senate earlier this week. Joining us now to discuss the bill and its prospects for passage are Mark Denzler, he's president and CEO of the Illinois Manufacturers Association, Delmar Gillis, he's Chief Operating Officer at Elevate Energy. That's a nonprofit that aims to ensure all communities have access to clean and affordable heat, power, and water. Jennifer Walling, Executive Director of the Illinois Environmental Council, and Jack Darren, Director of the Sierra Club's Illinois chapter. We did invite representatives from Exelon, ComEd, as well as the state's largest co-producer, Prairie State Energy Campus, to participate in discussion, but they declined. But we're glad all of you joined us. And first of all, Jack Darren, if I can begin with you. Earlier in the program, Amanda Vidicki talked to Governor Pritzker, and the first thing that he mentioned was how important this energy bill was to him. Why is this energy bill such a big deal?
Well, thanks, Phil. We really want to applaud Governor Pritzker for his leadership here, because he's not only acknowledging the science that is telling us very clearly the urgency of decarbonizing our power grid if we want to have a chance to avert the worst consequences of climate change, but I think he's also realizing the tremendous economic potential for our economy by moving boldly into the clean energy economy, and particularly for communities that need it most, by centering equity, not only those for whom we're creating the jobs, but all the small businesses and the wealth that we're hoping to create in communities of color and communities that are facing this transition away from fossil fuels. So I think he sees it as both an imperative to act on science, but also a huge opportunity for Illinoisans.
Jennifer Walling, according to reports, this bill has been inching closer to finalization, but it just hasn't been able to cross the finish line. What happened?
I think that with all of the leadership, all of the parties involved, there is urgency around getting this energy bill done. I think that the details just need to be ironed out, and we need to bring it to a vote. I think all of the items are there to get this done and get this done quickly, and we're going to be seeing it within the month.
Jack Darren, my understanding is that the Prairie State Energy Campus, which provides energy to some suburbs, including Naperville, Winnetka, Geneva, and Batavia, that get power from the company. Some Senate Democrats balked at provisions that would phase out coal by 2035. How do you get beyond that opposition, that continued embrace of what some people call the state's biggest polluter?
I mean, Prairie State is definitely the state's biggest emitter of carbon. It's the 7th largest source of carbon in the entire United States. And for this coal plant to come in at really, truly the 11th hour and threaten to block a deal that could deliver so much for so many in terms of jobs and renewable energy and access to clean transportation is just outrageous. I don't think it's a majority that have that view, but unfortunately a few were able to hold the bill up on Monday. But we have seen broad support for decarbonizing our electric grid in the General Assembly, in the public, and from Governor Pritzker. And I'm confident that we can overcome the objections of this one company and set Illinois on the path to a clean energy future, hopefully in the weeks to come, if legislators can return to Springfield in June.
Mark Denzler, how do you see it? How do you see what's at play here in terms of wanting to balance the need for jobs, the interests of existing companies and so forth? What's your take?
Well, thanks, Phil, for having me. And the energy issue is critically important for the manufacturing sector. We consume 1/3 of all energy in the United States. And so any changes in Illinois' energy marketplace have a significant impact on the state's industrial sector that also employs 555,000 men and women and jobs that average about $80,000 a year. And so, two or three of the magic words that you don't hear a whole lot are: what is the cost impact? What is the impact on reliability of the grid? And more importantly, what is the impact on jobs in the state? And those are all things that need to be considered as the governor and lawmakers debate this energy policy that's going to have a huge impact on the state's residents and businesses.
Mark Denzler, do your members see this attempt to transition to green-powered energy? Do they see it as an opportunity? Do they see it as a threat? How would you describe it?
Well, I think, Phil, a little bit of both. Manufacturers have been leaders in reducing energy consumption for decades. As I mentioned, they're the largest users of energy. And over the last decade, we've seen manufacturers reduce their emissions by nearly 20%, while at the same time increasing productivity by a like amount. And outside of personnel costs, energy is often the most expensive line item for any manufacturer. And so for decades, manufacturers have been taking steps to reduce their energy usage. And as I like to say, Phil, manufacturers not only use this technology, we build it and we create it. And there's some amazing and innovative companies and products that you see around the state. So there are definitely opportunities, but there's also concern that if we lose baseload capacity, what's that going to do to the cost and reliability of Illinois' energy sector?
Delmar Gillis, Governor Pritzker is said to be very behind a push for equity in how this energy bill would be implemented, assuming it's passed. What are some of the priorities you have?
Yes, and thank you, Phil. We are really focused on equity through climate action. And what we've really tried to do with this bill is bake equity in. And we've really looked at it from three main areas. The first is access to programs like our Illinois Solar for All program that provides access to solar for underserved communities. The second is through job creation, and we're doing that through the creation of workforce and job placement hubs across the state. And lastly, we're doing it through community wealth building, where we're looking to build a green bank, as well as support diverse contractors and getting access to incentives so that we'll see community solar in every community across the state.
Delmar Gillis, so many goals about inclusion and that sort of thing seem to be aspirational and suggestions only, for want of a better term. How do you know that this bill would be enforceable in terms of meeting the kinds of goals that you were just talking about?
Well, we've done a couple of things in the bill that I think will really kind of change that dynamic, Phil, that you're talking about. The first is that we are really looking to have a system where if you want to access state incentive, you have to meet certain diversity targets. So basically, you have to be this tall to ride this ride. The second thing that we're going to do is that we're also going to be collecting and tracking a lot of data around demographics to make sure that we're meeting our goals and targets for the programs. And through those two primary measures, we feel like we're going to be able to drive a lot of the community-based diversity that we want to see throughout the bill and really across the state.
Jennifer Walling, there are reports that Governor Pritzker had reached a tentative agreement with Exelon for increased taxpayer subsidies to prevent the closure of 3 nuclear plants. Is that a good idea?
Well, I think that in talking about Exelon, that is such a de minimis portion of the bill. This bill has so many benefits for renewable energy, reaching 100%, turning off the coal plants that are receiving $1.1 billion a year in subsidies from the capacity market. So many other things. I think that discussion is a tiny part of it to get an energy bill to completion.
excuse me, Jack Darren, expectations for ultimate passage. The governor seems to be pretty confident as he talked to Amanda Vinicky that this was going to happen. How are you reading the tea leaves?
We're pretty optimistic. If legislators can get back to Springfield in June, we're pretty confident this can get done. There are so many benefits in this for so many communities. The governor's bill is a lot like the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which has close to a majority of the General Assembly of supporters. So the support is there if we listen to communities. And if we don't let the state's biggest polluter try to derail it, I think we can get this done and get on the road to the clean energy future we all want.
Mark Denzler, how do you see the odds for this bill actually coming to pass?
I think it's going to be a tight vote, and I think that legislators are going to consider the rate impact of this as one of the things, Phil. And, you know, they're looking at $12 to $20 a month for a residential customer, and for businesses, you know, again, it may be a 15% increase in their rates. And so, again, I think legislators have to try to balance, as I mentioned, the cost, the reliability, and also the impact on current jobs here. But I think we'll have an answer in the next couple of weeks.
And we shall be watching, and we thank you all for your insights and for your time. Mark Denzler, Jennifer Walling, Jack Darren, and Delmar Gillis. We appreciate it. And now, Brandis, we go back to you.
Phil, thank you. Now we go back out to Paris Schutz, who spent the day reporting in the Northalsted neighborhood in Lakeview. It's part of our Chicago Tonight in Your Neighborhood series. Paris.
Hey, Brandis, we're here with Ken Griffin, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Howard Brown Health Center. Howard Brown obviously operates here in Boys Town, up and uptown. It's very crucial for the LGBTQ population. Talk about how difficult it is, in general, for access to health care among the LGBTQ population.
Absolutely, Paris. One of the biggest things that we have here in Chicago and around the country is access to care for the LGBTQ population. And because of that, Howard Brown specializes in that care. We are a federally qualified healthcare center that sees patients that are underinsured, uninsured, and no insurance at all to ensure that we have an equitable place for them to come and receive care.
And talk about how you've been treating this community in COVID. Has it been hard to get people vaccinated? Are they fully bought into vaccination?
So for us, it's actually been a fairly interesting trip with vaccinations. We were the first ones to host a mass vaccination event here in Chicago, and on February 13th, we vaccinated 2,000 individuals that were Howard Brown patients and community. To date, we are at about 60,000 patients vaccinated. Whether you're a Howard Brown patient or not, community member or not, we are vaccinating you. So we've had a very good chance with vaccinating individuals and bringing them into our healthcare centers.
Do you see any hesitancy among any communities or folks that you have to sort of demystify the process to a little bit?
Absolutely. Because of the vaccination rollout and how quick people think it rolled out, we of course have to make sure that individuals know that vaccines were not prepared overnight. We do see some hesitancy. However, we do educate the individuals on when the vaccine was prepared, how it will do good for you, and why you should receive it.
We talked about this a little bit with the Center on Halsted, but what about the mental health impact in the LGBTQ community? What have you seen there, specifically in folks that might identify as non-binary, transgender, because we heard that perhaps they're struggling a little more.
Absolutely. People are struggling more because of the access to health care. So here at Howard Brown, we provide an array of services from primary care to behavioral health services to dental and other services. So if individuals feel that they need to come into Howard Brown or any of our 11 healthcare centers around Chicago to receive care, we are readily available and we're seeing patients. We've actually gone back to pre-COVID hours and we are seeing more patients now than we did a year ago.
And as I understand, Howard Brown has launched a study into the impact of COVID on the LGBTQ population. What have you found so far?
Absolutely. So our study is trying to get 45,000 LGBTQ members across the country and to look and see what COVID has done to these individuals. Because COVID has ravaged our neighborhood, our community, and our population, we want to make sure that we're providing the best service for the LGBTQ population.
So you don't no results quite yet. You're
no
still
results
looking into
quite
that.
yet.
What do you
but
expect
we're
to
still,
find?
What we're expecting to find is the same thing we find with other marginalized communities, that because of the comorbidities, the pre-existing conditions, and some of the elements that we may have as part of this community, that it has plagued us in a different way. So we're trying to make sure that we're providing that care for those individuals, so if we have another pandemic in another 100 years, we'll be safe and ready to go.
to learn lessons from
Absolutely,
this past year.
absolutely.
All right, Ken Griffin, Ken J.A. Griffin.
Ken J.A. Griffin.
As I understand, a different Ken Griffin.
Different
we
Ken
know there's
Griffin.
another
Thank you
Ken
so
Griffin
much.
in town. All right, thank you very much. And Brandis, we toss it back to you.
Yeah, Paris, not to be confused with the other Ken Griffin. Thanks, we'll see you. Up next, an all-new Ask Geoffrey. But first, a look at the weather.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part through the generous support of the Julius Frankel Foundation.
A contest meant to inspire civic pride gets knocked off course after accusations of political scheming. But hey, this is Chicago. Our resident crooner, Geoffrey Bear, is here with more on the city's rocky search for an official song in this week's Ask Geoffrey. This one should be good, Geoffrey. I'm looking forward to it.
You'll never get this song out of your head.
Oh, great. So, when Mayor Jane Byrne was in office, I composed a song for an anthem contest held by the city. Last year, I created a new arrangement and recording to give Chicagoans a boost during the pandemic. What can you tell me about the original contest and the search for a Chicago anthem? And that question comes to us from Edgewater.
Okay, so let's take a quick listen to part of the song by Mr. Burgard, who actually describes himself as a retired onion peddler from Edgewater.
And when twilight falls on the prairie, you twinkle like the stars, oh so heavenly by your inland sea. Chicago, you're our home.
What harmony. I got goosebumps.
About it. Like a little sort of
That's beautiful.
So the story of the anthem contest begins in 1982 when 36th Ward Alderman Louis Farina stepped up to the podium at an official city luncheon. And since the city had no anthem back then, his walk-up music, which was not chosen by him, was Frank Sinatra's rendition of My Kind of Town, which set a sort of a nightclub tone. The embarrassed Alderman Farina decided the city needed something a little more dignified, so he pushed a resolution through City Council to launch an official search, which was backed by then Mayor Jane Byrne. After Byrne took over the contest, she assembled a search committee of 20 local composers, musicians, TV personalities, and philanthropists, and she put up $5,000 from her own campaign fund as a prize. The rules were quite simple. Write a song that embodies the history of Chicago. The winner was going to get to perform in front of City Council and have their anthem immortalized at city lunches and events.
So what kind of response did the city get?
Overwhelming. If you could believe it, the city ended up receiving more than 2,000 submissions, ranging from polka to mariachi to blues, and apparently there was quite a range of quality as well. Finally, in July 1983, the judges named a winner, a freelance musician from Evanston named Jeff Jacobs, for his entry called Song of Chicago Alive. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't find any recordings of that song or get in touch with Jacobs, but we did find some lyrics. The song ends with these lines: "Stand with the strength of the old water tower through hardship and victory, tall as her skyline in pride and power, Chicago is home to me."
Now, of course, Geoffrey, something tells me that's not the end of the story.
That's right. As you can tell by the fact that we couldn't find any recordings of the song, the story does not have a happy ending. This is Chicago, after all, where everything, it seems, even good, a feel-good song contest becomes political. One challenge was that the original sponsor of the whole thing, Alderman Louis Farina, was convicted of extortion in 1983 and spent 13 months in jail. So much for dignity. A bigger problem was that Mayor Jane Byrne lost re-election that same year to Harold Washington, who became Chicago's first black mayor. And according to newspaper reports at the time, Washington wasn't a fan of the winning song. After hearing it twice, he reportedly said simply, "I am not moved." And the song was discarded. The mayor's press secretary told the New York Times that Washington wanted a song to capture Chicago's history and diversity, specifically wanting to hear a mention of Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, of course, is Chicago's first non-native settler and a person of color. But the contest's now jilted winner, Jeff Jacobs, speculated the decision was politically motivated. One of the anthem's defenders was none other than Alderman Ed Burke, one of the ringleaders of the council wars that pitted 29 mostly white aldermen against Washington's entire agenda. So Jacobs never did receive the promised $5,000 prize, and most of the judges resigned in protest. But the controversy did get the song played on radio stations as far away as California.
A lot of Chicago classics in that story, Geoffrey. So the whole thing then seems like a bit of a debacle.
Yeah, indeed. And I should note that this actually wasn't the last search for a Chicago anthem. In 1985, Chicago's Tourism Board sponsored a contest. The winner, titled Calling Me Home Chicago by Paul David Wilson, received substantial play on the radio as a single, and it even was featured in a city commercial starring the one and only Rock Hudson. You have got to see this.
Chicago. And no matter where I've been, where I'll go, you keep calling me home.
No matter where you're from in America, Chicago is your hometown. Come home.
It's a feeling that calls me.
Well, little Roy.
Chicago is calling me home.
Oh, yes. So there were several other attempts to establish a song. After that, they went nowhere. So bottom line, we're hoping we fulfilled our questionnaire MJ's hope of giving pandemic-weary Chicagoans a little uplift with his song.
Well, absolutely. Well, and I was uplifted by this segment. Thankfully, Chicago is a city that has a lot of songs that have been written about it. Geoffrey, thank you for joining us, as always. And you can hear the song in full on our website, as well as find more details about the search for an official Chicago anthem. While you're there, don't forget to submit your own question to Geoffrey Baer. That's at WTTW.com/AskGeoffrey. And we're back to wrap things up right after this. And that's our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news.
You can also get the show via podcast and through the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Week in Review.
Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm serving Chicago for 37 years.